In order to try out a new tool in my arsenal, I went to the taiga. The temperature dropped to 10 degrees and a light rain began. Such weather conditions will not interfere with my little trip in any way. In order for the backpack not to get wet, I leave it between two birches, and I go to inspect the nearest surroundings. Almost immediately, I find two small trees located 2 meters apart. This distance is more than enough to stretch the tent. Not too far away, I found a freshly broken tree trunk. I'm going to make a crossbar out of it. To hang the crossbar, I put a loop of ordinary clothesline on both trunks, the supply of which is necessarily in the pocket of my backpack. This is a Soviet raincoat tent. A shelter made from such a cloak will be more than enough for one person. I tie the edges of the tent with scraps of the same rope to the most common knot. I pulled the 2 rear cars to the nearest trees. For this purpose, metal eyelets are provided on the raincoat. The drawback should be moderate, not too strong, but also such that the awning does not sag. When the shelter from the rain is ready, I start making a fire. In a damp forest, it's hard to find dry brushwood to quickly light a fire, but the dry birch bark that I saved in advance in the last hike will help to make a fire much faster. It's time to move the backpack under the canopy, not forgetting to put foam under it. Additional insulation of the place under the awning is not required because the foam is thick enough. After a few minutes, the campfire crackled merrily and it became warmer. While we have the strength, we need to prepare firewood for the evening. After some subtle manipulations, my firewood supplies were replenished with a decent amount of logs. Having warmed up by a hot fire, I completely forgot why I came here. I need to make a scabbard before it gets dark. The easiest option is to make them from fresh birch bark. After accurately fitting the knife to the birch bark sheet, I begin to manually shape the future sheath. In order to fix the two edges of the bark at the right distance from the knife, you will need small branches split on one side. I calibrate the inlet with a knife handle by simply inserting it to the desired depth. An improvised clothespin will also help me mold the back of the scabbard. With a black pen, I mark the line along which the connecting seam will run. Sometimes unforeseen situations happen in the forest. The tool I brought with me for punching holes is broken. After a small repair, the cutter is back in full combat readiness, but they had to work more steadily and carefully. Having punched holes around the perimeter of the scabbard, I thread a cord through them and stretch along the entire length of the seam, not forgetting to tighten the knots. To ensure that the edges of the rope do not dissolve, I melt them to each other. It remains to make a suspension for the belt and the scabbard is ready. I managed to make such a simple scabbard in just an hour. The knife sits tight in them and does not fall out anywhere. When it gets pretty dark, I start cooking dinner. I plant the freshest pieces of meat on 2 branches. I stick both ends of the improvised skewer into the ground. I install the second skewer perpendicular to the other. This arrangement of branches will prevent them from bending or falling. I use a knife to turn the meat on the skewer. It's long enough not to burn your hands. After full roasting, I sprinkle the shish kebab with coarse sea salt and smear with spicy Dijon mustard. Carefully distributing the mustard over a piece of meat, I add the last ingredient, the forced sour cream sauce.